If you're offended, well, we do not apologise. If you can look at this with an open mind and not take life too seriously, then you may just come away well and truly entertained.
Never fear, Schumbeg is here, and today's guest is Liall Mackenzie, Caithness boxer. Now on to the show.
It's good because you got a good story. Like I was saying that to you in the pub. You done a lot. I mean, what is it? It's just all really I want to do is get people who got interesting stories and got either they do a lot for actual Caithness, and like with what you've been doing, you done a lot for Caithness, so far, like
Yeah.
But we start out question I was going to start out is when did you start the army? When was that? When you just left school, or?
Not straight out of school. I actually worked at Caithness Creels. In fact, before I left school, I was working at the weekends at Westerseat Farm. So just at weekends, and then I worked there full time for a small period of time when I first left school. So I left at 16. I left as soon as I could. And then I went to Caithness Creels for a little while. And I was trying to get apprenticeships and things, but with no luck. And I thought to myself, oh, I just kind of was getting itchy feet, and I felt like I needed to leave Caithness and do a bit and see a bit of the world. And I had no, I wasn't in the Army Cadets. It's not something really that I was, that I'd thought much about previously. And I don't know, I don't even really remember how it came about. But yeah, I was 18, so it was 2007. I joined the army. Yeah, and training was 6 months. So 2008, I think was it August. I was in the August intake, so it was kind of through the winter, which was hard. It's in the north of England. The training is in Carrick, and obviously wet and windy and cold, and you can kind of either get the summer intake or the winter intake, and I was in the winter intake. So I passed out of training in 2008, and then I was posted to Germany initially. I lived in Germany for a couple of years, served in the Highlanders. But yeah, 2007 I joined at 18 years old.
Yeah. I know, like, what is it? Like, I had a couple of friends they went to the army, and I had one friend. What is it? At the time he fell out with his dad, and he never, his family never went down. It means all of us went down for him for his pass out. That was in Birmingham. It means we fought
Right.
a whole group of us. Like he had, I can't mind how many tickets he had, but we all went down for him. Like, means it. Even watching it, it was like getting goosebumps. It was like it was a big thing for him. Doing his pass. Yeah. But even then, it's still like he used to stay with me, for at different times in his life, and what is it? I think he found it hard just until the army life. I think like when he used to come back up on holiday, he stay with me for a couple of weeks, and then the police would, or the army police or whatever, used to try to get him back down there, or he would get, because he would be off, is it AWOL or whatever they call it,
AWOL, yeah, absent without leave, yeah.
Means that happened to him a few times. Like, he just couldn't adjust. But he finally, I think it. But it's a hard thing. Like, I think like no one after I think I can't mind how many months he had to do, and then after you do pass it, actually in for 3 years, and that's quite scary. Like, definitely as a young guy, like I think.
Yeah, you used to be able to buy yourself out years ago if you wanted to come out, but you can't do that anymore, or certainly not when I was in. It might have changed. I got out in 2012, I think it was, and quite a lot of things have changed since then. But yeah, you would be in for. You had to do 6 weeks in basic training, and then there was a little window where you could DVR. I think it was called discharge as of right. So you had, I think it was a 2 week period or a 1 week period, a small window where you could get out if you wanted to. And if you didn't in that window, that was you. You were in for 4 years, and there's no no way to get out. You couldn't buy yourself out. And I actually, to tell the truth, I seriously thought about leaving. I remember phoning my family at the time. I spoke to my mum and I says, "Oh look, I don't want to do this. I want to come home." And she sort of talked me out of it. She said, "Look, think about everything you were saying before you left. You were saying that there's not much opportunities in Caithness. There's nothing really you want to do. And so what are you going to do if you come back?" Kind of thing. You'll just end up in the same situation and regretting it. So she kind of talked me out of it. I was lucky I had that family support behind me. A lot of people don't, you've just mentioned it there about your mate falling out
Yeah.
with this. And that's no surprise. There's so many people, the demographic of people who join the army, especially the infantry, I would say, come from families who have all these problems. So a lot of people don't have that support. I was lucky that I did. So my mum basically talked me out of leaving, so I stayed in. And I'm glad. I'm glad that she did. But that was me then for 4 years.
Jesus, means was it daunting for that for you, or did you get used to it? Sort of. I guess you had to just grit and bear it, but did it?
Yeah, yeah. There was. It's a bit of a mixture. There was really difficult times, and I suppose I joined the Highlanders. So at the time there was 5 regular battalions that you could join, and you kind of put in your preference, but depended on what was happening in the world and what battalion needed more manpower, you might not get the choice. That what you chose. So at the time, 2007, 2008, Iraq and Afghanistan was on the go, and so it was kind of whatever battalion was going to get deployed next and needed the manpower, they would send you. I chose the Highlanders, obviously being from Wick, and I got into it. So I knew that I would be moving to Germany because they were based in Bad Fallenbostel in Germany. So I passed at the training, got sent to Germany, and it's not until I was actually there that the reality hit. And I was only getting home maybe 2 or 3 times a year,
Jeez,
and it was quite difficult. It was difficult. I was homesick, and I was 18 years old. There's lasses you're interested in back home, and you're thinking, no, that's never going to happen now. If somehow I didn't really consider all those things until I was there, so it was difficult. Yeah, it was
I
really
could,
difficult.
how many tours did you do? Or did you go across?
Yeah, so within 3 months of passing out of training, we were on an exercise because Bravo Company within our battalion, the Highlanders, were going to Afghanistan. They were getting deployed to Afghanistan. So we were on an exercise to help them prepare for that. It wasn't confirmed what the rest of the battalion was doing. As we were on that exercise, the commanding officer came out and confirmed that us, Alpha Company, was going to be going to Iraq very, very soon. And I remember at the time, 18 years old, I was delighted. I was absolutely delighted. So within 3 months of coming out of training, I was deployed to Iraq. And then I missed Afghanistan twice. So I transferred battalions. So my mother was ill. She quite seriously ill. She had cancer. Thankfully, she came through it. But so that I could get home more often, transferred to the Black Watch, which is based at Ardasir, just outside of Inverness. When I came out of the Highlanders, they deployed to Afghanistan. And then a couple of years later, I signed off and got out, and the Black Watch went to Afghanistan just after that. So I managed to miss it twice, which at the time I was really disappointed about. I wanted to do both theatres, but now looking back on it, I think it was maybe a saving grace. I'm glad now that I didn't go, but I was disappointed at the time. Yeah.
But it's like everything happens for a reason. That was meant to be. You weren't meant to be going. I definitely believe in that.
Yeah.
But means how was it when you went on tour? Was it was that a reality check, or were you finding it?
Yeah, big time. Even long before then, training was a massive reality check. At the time, 18 years old, I thought I was a bit of a lad in Wick. And then I went to training and I seen. Well, I can't remember now the numbers. I can't remember how many people was in our platoon, but over half left. So from when we started to passing out, there was less than half of us actually got through the training and passed out. I seen grown men crying, and I was nearly there myself. I just wanted a hug from my mum. It really humbles you. I thought I was a bit of a tough man, but you soon find out it's a different level altogether. And then going on tour, it's just crazy. It was hard to fathom that you were on the same planet. I was very sheltered previous to that. I hadn't really been too many places, and certainly never been anywhere that kind of thing was going on. So it was, it was a real eye opener. Really, really difficult at times, as you can imagine. But a really good experience in terms of it sets you up for the rest of your life. There's nothing. Every time since then, if I'm a bit nervous about something, say if I've got a job interview or anything's about to happen in my life and I'm a little bit nervous about it, I just kind of say, come on, you've done that, so you can do this kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I know, like what like my mate said, like it's there to break you down and build you back up. And what is it? And even when he went over like Afghanistan and that, and he says it was just weird temperature. Like temperature would be really hot through the day, and then at night it was just dropping, it'd be freezing cold. Like, and he goes, he couldn't get used to that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. It was really even places you would go on exercise. It was in Kenya twice on exercise, and yeah, the temperature was mad. There was one of the exercises we were on. There was only two private soldiers, me and a close friend of mine who was actually African. We were the only two private soldiers who didn't go down with some form of heat illness.
all right.
It was insane. But it's the weight that you're carrying, all the kit that you're carrying.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't hydrate yourself enough and stuff, but obviously those exercises are to prepare you for that when you go to, on theatre.
Yeah. Is that a picture of what you sent me? Is that your friend in the army?
Oh
Um,
no, that was the one when I'm with standing beside somebody.
yeah, I thought when you're saying he's from Africa, I thought it's maybe the same guy. Yeah.
No,
No, no.
that guy actually he was an Iraqi soldier.
Okay.
So that was an operation we were on one night in Basra, Iraq, and we went over to a police station to chat to the Iraqi police, and there was us from the British Army, excuse me, and a contingent of Iraqi soldiers were helping us, and he was one of them. So I
Oh,
just got a photo beside him because of his kit and all that is different. So just thought it was a cool photo.
yeah, that's cool. Well, how is it when you're over there? Were they quite welcoming, or was it? I mean, I'm guessing you always got your guard up. But was the actual like people okay with you, or?
It was a mix. So we were in Basra
Mhm.
City, and some areas you would go in. Um, the main reactions you would get were from the children. Some areas we would go through. So we were on armored convoy all the time. We were in these big vehicles called Mastiffs, and there was four of them. And I was usually on top cover, so on the top with the machine gun giving cover to everybody, so I could
Right.
see what was going on all the time. And yeah, some areas you would go in, and all the children were sort of looked happy that we were there. But in some
Mhm.
areas, and we kind of mapped out the areas that were hostile. Some areas that would be throwing stones, massive rocks, and I tell you, I used to be really surprised at the size of rocks that those Iraqi kids could throw, and I had to have a cage around me in the top
Yeah.
cover to protect me from those rocks because they could pick up huge rocks. So it was a real mix, and exactly why I'm not sure, but I suppose it's like anywhere, isn't it? It's like here in the UK, there's different political opinions. I suppose it was the same there.
But no, I mean, you don't have the answer. I say you think once you left the army, did not PTSD, but did you get that, or did you feel changed your personality slightly in a negative way, or even positive actually? Yeah, if you.
Um, I don't. So I didn't get PTSD from my time in the army. It's something I have. What would I say? Not through myself, but to tell you the truth. So I was in for 5 years, well, just shy of 5 years, and now I'm counting. There's 16 people that I served with that have taken their lives. So which is massive. I don't know 16 people from Wick. And I'm 37 years old now. I don't know 16 people from Wick from those 37 years of my life that have taken their own life. But in 5 years of military service, I know 16 people who've taken their life. So it's a massive, massive issue.
Definitely.
But personally, myself, I mean, one thing I could say is when I was there in Iraq, 2008, it was a little bit less crazy, shall we say, than it had been previously. There was still quite a bit going on, but it was not. You could say it wasn't as bad as what some people experienced.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the things that people experienced in Afghanistan was worse again. So that probably helped. So no, not personally, but it's something that I've experienced with people that I've served with quite a bit.
Yeah. Like I know it was a couple of years ago. I was in the pub in Bathgate, and it was a random guy, and he was nice, but he was edgy, yeah. And he kept on speaking, but like you could see, like, and then he just left the army. But whatever was affecting him at the time, like he was nice, but he was odd. He asked me, didn't he leave? I think he was just wanting to drink with somebody, and I was just. But I never knew what to do. I never knew because I was like, do you phone who do you phone till make sure this guy goes home all right? Like it was just like he seemed, because this is just this random guy in the pub, but you could see he was affected by whatever at the time he was in the army.
Yeah. I would say maybe having said that, what you've just said, I can relate to that. I remember one time, in fact, so it was a 6 month or just between 6 and 7 months tour, and you get home for 2 weeks. Not always halfway through, but during that time period, you get home from what's called R&R, rest and recuperation. And I was home and I was in Tesco car park chatting to one of my pals, Alan Bain, I think it was. I was chatting to Alan Bain, and I now know what it was the bird scarers from the airport, because I went on to work at the airport when I left the army, and I've put many of them things off. But at the time, I didn't know what it was. It was just a massive loud bang, and I sort of ducked and almost took cover behind the car. And Alan was like, "What the hell? What's that place doing to you?" kind of thing. Because I was still in that mode that I was expecting something to happen.
Yeah.
But that did wear off after being home for a while.
I've heard of people being like that, but brain muscle, isn't it? Because you're at used to like being high alert. And I mean, I know. Looking back with my friend who I was speaking about, I was really close to him. Like we worked stuff out, but like he came back after it, and we ended up falling out. And I was just so disappointed when we ended up falling out. But in looking back, maybe that was the reason, just because he just came out of the army and he was just like too much drink, and he ended up. What is it? We end up falling out, and it was just like now looking back on, maybe that was the reason. It was over nothing now, but just again, he was more edgier. He was more. He was just a bit tense. That's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, definitely. Emotions can be really high, and people can struggle to regulate their emotions, and quite often there's a lot of anger and things. But I actually have a bit of a theory on that, and it goes into something we've briefly chatted about before. I personally think that although, of course, the tours that soldiers go on don't help, I mentioned earlier, if you look at the demographic that the army recruit from, especially the infantry, it's working class backgrounds. Quite often, there's a lot of problems in the family, domestic violence, drugs, alcohol, all these kind of things. It falls into that category of ACEs, the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, which I think we've briefly talked about. And evidence shows that the more adverse experiences you've had as a child, the more negative outcomes later on in life. So I personally feel what's going on with a lot of these soldiers is that they've got problems or had problems long before they've joined the army. And then they're joining the army or sending them to war. That compiles it and makes it worse. We come back, and all of their problems are blamed on the tours. But I don't think it is fully the tour. If you were to take a group of 100, and this story's actually been done, if you were to take a group of 100 completely emotionally healthy people and put them on the exact same tour, and then a group of 100 emotionally unhealthy people who have had all this stuff happen in their background, the emotionally healthy people would deal with it a lot better and wouldn't have so much problems as a result of it. So I think that is a big part in what's going on, and the tours make it worse. But I think they've got existing problems before they've even joined the army.
Yeah, but it is weird. Well, it's not weird, but it's how pretty Crit is from, like you said, working class backgrounds, who people, mostly people from broken homes in some sort of way or another. But it should be something like for that, like even like coming out, like sort of like a program for like either for mental health. But again, they probably wouldn't want to pay money to that, because even like men's mental health is only now I think people are speaking up about it a wee bit. And I've like even up here is like nothing up here. You have to go down to Inverness. It means like say if you're whatever, it's 120 mile away. Yeah, if you can't leave your house, it's it's a far distance. Is should be a lot more doing up here. I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the positive thing is that it's been talked about and recognised more and more. We're still a long way behind where we should be probably, but it is there is improvements slowly but surely. So we're going in the right direction. I think it's just painfully slow.
Yeah. What is it? I mean, is that where you started boxing in? Was it in the army?
Yeah. Yeah, when I was young, I'd done martial arts. I did kung fu and jiu-jitsu. And I loved all that. But I was always interested in what would actually work in a real fight. I always used to do my coaches nothing because they would teach you one of these katas or whatever, and I was like, yeah, but would that actually work? And I even used to bring in gloves. Me and an old pal of mine would bring in gloves and try to get people to put them on so we could have a free fight, as I called it back then. But then I joined the army. I got the opportunity to join. Quite often, most battalions at the end of the year, they'll put on a boxing show before everybody goes on their Christmas leave. So you get 6 weeks of training, which isn't really boxing training. It ends up just an absolute scrap inside the ring. But when I got the chance to box, and I thought, now this is the real thing. I just fell in love with it. So that's where I started. It was in the army.
Jesus. How did you feel when you first went into the ring? Was your nerves all over the place, or are you quite a chilled guy? Like,
oh no, I wasn't chilled at all. I absolutely crapped myself for quite a while, for quite a few of my initial however many fights. I was very very nervous, but I did all right in the army. I think I had, was it 5 fights or something in the army? As I say, we weren't really coached how to box. It was just kind of scrapping in the ring. But I think I had 5 fights between the Highlanders and the Black Watch, and I won 3 of them and lost 2 of them. And I won the welterweight title in the Black Watch. So I was the welterweight champion of the Black Watch. So I thought, I'm all right at this, And so then when I left the army, I moved back to Wick. And of course, there was no club up anywhere north of Inverness at that time. So I started driving down to Inverness every Saturday morning. I did that for years, about 7 years or something. I was training once a week. And then I remember the first time I went down, I just kind of rocked up and I had my sparring gear and that, and we were in a room, a big open room, doing circuits and things like that. And then the main coach said, right, all those who are sparring, get your kit, come through. There was a separate room where the ring was. So I just grabbed my kit and walked through. First time there, the coach looks and goes, who are you? And I says, it's all right. I've had a few fights and that, I was quite smug, thinking, I've had a few fights in the army. So he goes, okay then, put your sparring kit on. And he put me in with this guy, Andrew Mackay, who ended up going pro as well. He fought for a Scottish title a few times, and another boy, Ethan Cascarino from here in Inverness, who was really good, both really, really good. And I just got battered solid for I don't know how many rounds. I was just, and I realised then what we did in
Yes.
the army was not boxing, And I just got punched about for months and months before I started to make improvements.
Jesus. Means that even with sparring, did you find it hard as far as like people on the same level as you when you're sparring? Like you might be giving it 20%, he's giving it 50%. Did you find that hard? When you go in a ring with, does that make sense?
Yeah. It's kind of funny, different clubs. So that club I went to when I came out of the army, I went down to this one called Inverness City. There's 3 clubs in Inverness now. There was 2 at the time. I went to Inverness City, which in hindsight was a mistake. We can talk about that later.
Okay.
And that was kind of one of them old school clubs where you sink or swim kind of thing. You like that, he put me in with them guys, and I just got battered, but I kept getting back in. Some people that would have put them off straight away, and they would have thought, "Ah, to hell with this," and they wouldn't have. But I just kept getting back in, regardless of how much of a hard time I was getting. And eventually I improved. But some, like when I eventually ended up coaching, running Caithness, I would kind of try to be sensible about who I was putting people in with to match them, and I'd give them a few rounds where they were kind of equally matched, and then I'd put them in with somebody who was going to give them a bit more of a hard time. And I didn't want them to be having really hard rounds constantly. So different clubs are different in terms of how they match sparring partners.
Yeah, because I know, like years ago, like my other mate, he was doing boxing, and then I went along, and it was one in Leaf. It was a few in Leaf, but it was one at Leaf, Meadowbank. I don't know, it's knocked in now, and it was there, but like I think it was like a sort of old school way. You go like you go in a ring, and it's basically just full on. Means, but sometimes like somebody like me, I just kind of learn like that, get my head punched in there. It's like you need it gradually. It means, and then my other mate, we went till what is it, Holyrood, Brad's one, and it was like slowly building you up. Well, it was building me up. He was asking, well, what are you coming to boxing for? And I said, just to lose weight and confidence. That's that was all I was at the time. That was what I was needing. But it means he slowly built me up till ends start going in the sparring. And I thought that was taught me like I wasn't carded up, but I was just doing it for fitness, like
yeah.
But
definitely,
sorry.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, that exactly my experience. Different clubs you get. There's a lot of these kind of old school ones that is kind of sink or swim. But I think now my main reason for not really doing that when I was running Caithness was the worry of head injuries. You don't want to, especially people who. My view of boxing now is unless you've got an end goal in mind, you don't want to be getting battered at the head all the time because it can't be good for you. Taking all these shots to the head. So I always tried to be kind of sensible about the sparring and making sure they weren't doing hard rounds and getting hit hard in the head all the time. So I would try to build people up, and it's better for people's confidence as well. And especially my theory was always teach people things in drills, then on the pads, then on the bag, and then in tic-tac sparring, we would call it. So not open sparring, but you would put conditions on the sparring, so you'd say to it, right, boxer A, you're going to do this, boxer B, you're going to defend and counter it. And that's all they're doing. They're trying to hit each other, but they're only doing that. And it's just kind of 50% as far as power is concerned. So then they've got the confidence to try what you've been teaching them in sparring. In drills and pad work and stuff. Because if you teach somebody something in drills and then on pads, and then you say, right, in you go against this guy who's hard as nails and is going to try to knock you out, they're not going to try it. They're just going to be, So, it's the best way to teach people.
You used to travel 120 miles down to Inverness. Like most people would go, you know what, fuck it, I'm not doing that. As it shows in mind power with you, it's like, really, it's 120 mile. I'm going to go once or twice a week down to a different city. It's like you get people up here probably wouldn't go to the first show if it was like, it's too much a mission. Well, or like even when I lived in the city, it's the other side of the city, and there's a lot of people going, nah, it's in a different area. I can't be bored. Means, shows a different mindset.
Yeah, I was just obsessed with it. And I suppose probably what helped, you were saying earlier about, things are meant to be kind of thing. I think now looking back at my life in hindsight, I think everything leads you on to what you end up doing, because when I was in the army, I was used to driving mega mile. I used to drive from Wick to Germany and back. Not every time. Sometimes I would fly, but um, I was used to traveling mega miles. So for me to go to Wick to Inverness, it wasn't that bad. I didn't mind it, and I loved driving as well. So I was obsessed with boxing. I loved driving, so I enjoyed the drive down. Sometimes the drive back up, slightly concussed when it wasn't so good. But yeah, but I was just obsessed with it, and yeah, it was once a week, every Saturday morning for I can't remember. I think, as I say, 7 years or so. So I was only training technical boxing wise once a week, but then I went on to do quite well. I had quite a reasonable record for an amateur and won a Scottish novice title. So again, I thought I'm all right at this, because I was fighting guys from Edinburgh and Glasgow and Aberdeen, all over Scotland who are training every night of the week. And I'm traveling all that miles and then beating them. So I think if you look at my boxing career, I'm proud of it. It's not the best in the world. Obviously, there's people who've done a lot more, but when you consider only training once a week, and the miles I was doing and things like that, I often ask myself if I was training every night of the week like them guys were, how much better could I have been? Or what would have happened then? There's no point in thinking like that, I don't suppose. But yeah, I'm proud of what I achieved considering all that.
Well, I was going to get onto that. Like I wrote a lot of stuff down there. Means that's why I'm going through line by line. What is it? Because like Scottish champion, that's none of my people's done that, and you done that. What's how many fights were you in till you got to there?
So again, it's changed now, but the way it used to be categorised was novice level was between 0 and 6 fights.
Mm.
Once you were on 7 to 14 was intermediate, and then above 14 you were open class. So I think I'd had 3 or 4 fights or something, and I entered, and I'd had three actually, and I'd lost all three. And I remember sort of saying to my coach at the time, I think I'll maybe just give it a miss because, as I say, I'd had those ones in the army and done okay. And then I started this one in Civvy Street, or getting into my army terminology,
Yeah,
in the real world after coming out of the army, and I realised, what we did there was not boxing, and I'm maybe not actually as good as I thought I was. I lost these 3 fights, and I was saying to my coach, I think I'll maybe just give it a rest. And he says, no, no, trust me, the wins are going to start coming. So we entered the novice championships, and I went in, not having much hope, considering I just lost 3 fights. And into the welterweight division, which was the most stacked division. The welterweight, middleweight, these kind of weights. There's loads of people about that size, so many people. So I ended up fighting 4 times, and I won all of them, and got the title. And when it was all over, I was a bit confused, thinking what just happened there. And I actually went on after that to win. I won 11 in a row, so I lost my first 3, and then I won 11 in a row. And I was just about to give up after losing that first 3. So
Is that
yeah.
is that what is that place where it's got 4 rings? Mine's went blank, and outside Glasgow, where you won.
Yeah.
What's that?
It's just went out of my mind as well. Ravens Creek.
Yeah, I think so. What's the area called? I forgot totally.
Motherwell, isn't it? I think it's at
That's it,
Motherwell.
because
Yeah.
M&D's is quite next to that.
Right.
Because I was down there one time watching one of my mates, and then I seen you in the corner. This was only like 2 years ago. I think you're means I went over. I was watching Caithness boxing for a wee while till he came on.
All right.
Cool. I was there about it was 2 years ago. I was down there.
All right.
Because he had a gym in Nidri. Means what is it? Means I was sitting there watching him, he hasn't done it like 3 years. Means he was just came on, and then I looked over. Oh, it's Caithness boxing. Means I went over watched these for a wee while.
Oh, right. Oh, that's funny, isn't it? I never
It's
noticed you.
funny because it's just got 4 rings, and then you got
Aye.
to stand. It means it's a good place like that. Means
It's quite an event. It's quite an event, as you say. There's 4 rings, and there's I don't know how many, hundreds of people there watching. And it's
yeah.
huge, It's huge. And you would have noticed the big curtain behind that. All the boxers are through there. We just appear from the curtain to jump in the
Yeah.
rings before the fight, and that. Yeah, it's a massive event.
Is
Yeah,
that is that everybody from Scotland? Is like all the little clubs, all the clubs from Scotland just go into that for that's their main event.
yeah,
Yeah.
That's the Scottish national tournament. Yeah, as I say, there was the novices, intermediates, and then the open class. But now they've changed it. It's kind of broke down a little bit more. Same idea, they just kind of stages to it,
Yeah.
Right.
And just what is it? Means you're 28 when you came. What is it? Professional.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was. Yeah.
Aye. Because I must like even that's a massive goal. Like, there's nobody in Caithness who's I don't think there's anybody in Caithness who's a professional boxer.
I don't think so either. I know that, like, mind, years ago, well, before me and your time, but you might have heard some of the old fogies talking about the days of the sideshows where there would be a ring and people would jump in and fight, and I think they were, I don't know if they class themselves as professionals or not, but certainly not, in today's modern era, underneath the British Boxing Board of Control. I think I'm the first from Caithness to turn pro, as far as I know, but I don't know. Maybe somebody watching can correct us if that's not right.
No, that's really cool. Like, it's just when you're speaking about because like again, it was like your club. It started up in the same year. Were you 28 when you started out?
Yeah, that's right, actually. Yeah, and the club, I was thinking before I came on that I've got to give the right people a wee shout out, because people often say, that I founded the club, and I suppose in some respects I did. But what happened really was how the club started was it was after I won that novice title. So that was in 2013. I won that, and then there was a bit about me in the John O'Groats Journal, or the Courier, whatever it was at the time. So people noticed it, and I was still just doing my thing, going down every Saturday morning. And then a woman called Katrina Sutherland messaged me. So she owns that country spa out there at Leicester.
All right.
She messaged me and asked if I would coach her son, Scott Sutherland. And I can't remember initially. I'm sure initially I said no, but I certainly thought no in my head if I didn't say it, because I thought, it's only a novice. It's a novice title I've won. It's early days yet for myself. I'm not a coach kind of thing. So I thought I can't coach anybody. But then I thought about it, and I thought, well, I was 24 when I got out of the army, so I could drive up and down Timerness. But he was a young lad at the time. He couldn't drive anywhere, and there was nothing in. There was no boxing in Caithness.
Yeah.
So I thought about it, and I said, right, okay. So I think it was every Tuesday and Thursday night after school, he would come to mine, and I would do pad work with him. And then I said to his mum, Katrina, and his dad, Stuart, if you want, I can take them down every Saturday morning to the boxing club as well. So that's what started my coaching career, if you like. Was taking on this young lad, and then I took on Kevin Sinclair as well.
All right.
So Angie Sinclair gave me a shout, a big Chris Sinclair, so I took on Kevin. So I had these two young lads that I was coaching, and then it was High Life Highland got in contact with me. So Aileen Simonite gave me a shout and asked if I would coach young ones for High Life Highland. And again, I think initially I says, no, I've got these two young ones that I'm coaching and I'm taking them to Inverness, but I'm not really a coach. I can't. But anyway, one thing led to another. Before I knew it, I was coaching basically for High Life Highland at that time, with the help of Aileen Simonite. She was absolutely fantastic. So really, she's the one that started the club. As far as all the paperwork and all the red tape and all that stuff, I wouldn't have had a clue how to do all that stuff. she did all that. She set up Caithness Boxing Club, and then it ended up becoming a club within its own right, so we could coach adults and all that, outside of High Life Highland.
Ah.
So that the two kind of people I would give massive props to is Katrina for first of all getting me into coaching, or trusting me with her young son Scott.
Yeah.
Angie then trusted me with Kevin, and then Eileen Simonite for actually doing all the stuff in the background, and she never gets any credit for it. But she really is the one that as I say, did all the stuff in the background to get the club off the ground. And then before I knew it, I was head coach of this club. Kind of, I hadn't planned it at all. It just kind of happened.
It's just mental. That's another thing. It's just it all fell into the right place, because it was selling the rooms. You first started. I combined that, and it was a massive turnout. It just it filled up the whole room. It was like a big turnout.
There was huge interest in it. It was in the same room. And that was murder, because we had to set up and then take everything down at the end of the session. So we were an hour before the session and an hour after setting everything up and then dismantling it all. It was brutal. It was really difficult. Looking back on it now.
Because I think the first one, again, I think I went along for fitness at the time, and I think the first one, it was before you had the rings or any stuff. I just I don't know, was it the first ever one you done it, and I can't mind. I think I went in a few times and then I never came back. I think I don't know. It was a lost interest. I think I ended up going out with somebody, and it was just I went spiraling that way.
That's what happens. That's what happens. We've lost a lot of good boxers because of that.
Aye, but even I know with wrestling, we used to have a set up a ring, and it was like I could do it in my eyes closed, set up a ring, and then take it back down. I was the only thing I was good at. Wrestling, I can set a ring up, no problem, But, no, it means not. It's done really well, and I think when I first moved back up the road, I was like, I heard you're living down in Inverness, and I was kind of a bit disappointed because I was thinking your club was finished as well. I was like, oh no, you need a boxing club up in Wick. You need, but and somebody says no, it's been taken over with somebody else now. But at the time, I thought it's a good thing for a lot of people. A boxing club,
Yeah, absolutely. Going back into what we were saying earlier about people from certain backgrounds and things like that, I think all sports obviously are really good for youngsters to get into, but I think boxing maybe more so than a lot of sports attracts people from that kind of background quite a lot of the time, and it's a really, really good way of directing all that stuff they have pent up inside them in a positive way. I think there was, before we started, I think there was a bit of concern locally about what it would mean as far as, would it encourage people to be fighting out on the streets and things like that. But within quite a short period of time, we were getting contacted by the school, by teachers, by parents, by the police even. Quite a lot of the police joined the club to say how much of a positive impact it was having on all the youth. Even their grades improving and their behaviour at home improving. So I think that the concern, although we did have a few incidences with people fighting out in the street that came to the club, but that would happen anyway. Regardless of,
How do you deal with something like that? Do you just give them a warning and go, look, if you're going to be mucking about outside, you kind of, or do you just try to do you take them aside and sort of try to deal with it in a sort of different way,
Yeah, it can be difficult. When there was, a fair bit of debate in the committee at the time about how to deal with it exactly. And actually, the club that I'm coaching at now in Inverness, something similar has just happened. So it happens every now and again. But we in Caithness, me and Richard Thurland, who took it over after me, were very much of the opinion that we wanted to try and support the youth as much as possible. Yeah. And looking back at our own lives, we weren't perfect and we got ourselves in trouble. And I thought it was really important that we didn't just turn our back on them immediately as soon as they've done something. The few incidences that did happen, we got messages from members of the public, like family members of they'd been fighting with or whatever, basically calling for us to throw them out the club or ban, with this kind of vengeful attitude. And I would just say to them, look, that is the last thing that this person needs. We want to try and support them. If it gets bad enough and it's obvious that there's a pattern and they're not listening, and they're just continually causing problems and things, then we would say, look, you're no longer able to represent the club. But even then, we would have supported them in the background. It never got to that stage, thankfully. But no, we were really of the opinion that we wanted them to be able to come to us and tell us, look, I've messed up, I've done this or I've done that, and we wouldn't judge them or condemn them or throw them out of the club or take any of them kind of harsh measures. Because I think a lot of the time youth feel like they can't speak to their parents or they can't speak to teachers about those kind of things. So we wanted to be the ones that they could speak to, and we would try to support them.
Yeah, no, it's a good way you deal with it, because I know I don't know if this is a true story, but I heard somebody smashing the windows in was it a school or like in the old South school, and they said I think charging them or whatever, you're like, yeah, what is it? He came to your club and you built him up. Is that any truth in that story, or is this?
Yeah, you could actually probably, I'd forgotten about that, but yeah, somebody broke in. So I arrived one night and the door had been prized open. You could see the area, it must have been a crowbar or something. You could see the damage to the door and they'd broke in. Yeah, and I put a Facebook post welcoming them to the club and said that we would give them 2 free sessions to join a positive thing. Whether they ever came or not, I don't know. If they did, they didn't tell us they were the ones that broke into the club. Yeah, we basically were trying to give them an opportunity to turn things around, not go down that path, and come to the boxing club and do something positive and constructive,
But it's good. Actually, I actually like that. Like when I heard that story, like I thought, you're not turning your back on, people. They well, as I say, well, they fucked up or they did this. You're trying to like put them in the right path, sort of thing. And I think boxing and definitely, or even any sort of martial arts, if you go to it, it definitely makes you.
I know the lines you're going down, though, and yeah, I totally agree. I personally get really kind of fed up, and it kind of upsets me, actually, if I'm totally honest, how the approach that most people take to things, just in society in general. We take such a punitive approach to everything. We want to judge and punish people all the time. You've been a bad boy or a bad girl, and you need punished. And it's just like, I just don't get it. I just don't get it at all. We're all human. We've all messed up, and there's a reason behind people's behaviour. Again, go back to the ACEs study. That's what it usually comes back to. People need understanding and support, and that's how you turn things around. If you're judgmental and punitive, it only makes things worse and worse. So I just don't understand that at all.
Yeah, like way you think is the same sort of way I think. I think like I hate when people go say, "Oh, he's knackering up with his drugs and all the rest of it." And you're like, "No, it's a reason. It's a crutch. He's probably some sort of mental health. It's something he's blocking it drink wise, or and people just judge him because he's always partying or he's he's taking whatever drugs." No, not naming names, but it was a guy who was going to come on the podcast, and I was really wanting him to come on the podcast, and that was the first thing everybody was saying. I was like, no, but I know he's really talented in this way, yeah. But like that's what when I was asking about, I probably cut this out. But like people all said, oh yeah, he takes too much drugs. He's always partying. And I'm like, well, there's a reason behind that, why he's like that. But it's like what you say. People are so judgmental and so black and white. Yeah. It was it's like even up in Wick, you didn't get us in the same in the city, but like I think people judge a lot of people with their last name, and I think that's it's horrible. Because what is it? It's a lot of kids like I mind when I was living in Wick, and they probably have a certain last name, and they're fine when they're kids. And then when high school, it was always, oh, didn't hang about with him, And then you call somebody a clown, you end up coming a clown, or you end up coming a bad bastard because everybody's pushed them into that sort of light. Yeah. And absolutely, it happens in Caithness, like
Oh, it does, absolutely. It definitely does. And those people, they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't, because if they're if they're behaving the way everybody expects, they just think, they're just,
Yeah, yeah.
whatever the last name is. But
Yeah.
if they try to better themselves and they're doing well, people say, "Who the hell do they think they are? They're a,
Yeah,
whatever
yeah,
the
yeah,
last
yeah,
name.
yeah.
They can't win." Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, there definitely is a lot of that up in Caithness.
Means you've been on TV a few times. There's one IFL with boxing channel. Is that?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
um, yeah. That was after one of my fights. Yeah, it's on YouTube. That video. Yeah.
Yeah, I watched it last night. I was like, is this when I seen it? I was, that's quite a established name, eh? Like, a company was filming you like that.
That was my promoter at the time, David McAllister or David McAllister. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember Lee McAllister, Lee the assassin, the Aberdeen assassin, McAllister they called him.
No, I'm not sure.
He fought for a European title, and he was really really good, and I think he lost that one, but he was up there. He was sort of up and coming, and then I think he got himself in bother. I think he ended up in prison and one thing or another. I don't know, so I can't tell his story. But it was his brother anyway, was my promoter. So they're a massive boxing family in Aberdeen, the McAllisters. The other brother, Matthew McAllister, was actually trained under Ricky Hatton's camp for quite a while. He kept getting injuries. He was really, really good as well. But his career basically went in the pan because of injuries. But the other brother, David McAllister, he was my promoter. And yeah, he organised that, as you say, quite a well-established channel to come. I didn't even know. I got out of the ring. I won the fight. I think it was my second pro fight. I got out of the ring, and David says to me, "Go and do an interview with him."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "What?" I was sitting down in front of him, and I recognised the guy because he's done interviews with big names, And then here he is giving me questions. I don't know if you noticed in the video, I was kind of amused, thinking, "What the hell's going on here?"
I was thinking you're really well, like when well articulated. You were just speaking well, and I was like, if that's you just jumped out of the ring, like if that was me, I'd be gassed out, sitting there, can't mind my own name.
I'm surprised you recognised me. I was about 12 kilograms thinner back then.
Because if it's online, I mostly I can find it. Like if anybody comes on, I try my best to look everything up and videos and stuff. But yeah, no, that's cool. I mean, is that a family you're speaking about? Is that, I'm sure your brother told me. Is it where did they own a scrap business down in Aberdeen?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, because my brother came down, when I was in my pro fights, I had 4 professional fights. For the first few. My brother came down. Obviously, the boxers go down early, the way in, and all the rest of it. So my brother came down with me, before all the crowd that were coming down to watch came down. And we went to the scrapyard on a few occasions to chat to Davey and things like that. So yeah, he was with me there. Yeah, but I think they still own a scrapyard in Aberdeen.
No, well, aye, it's either you'd be rich if you own a scrapyard, like.
I know there was big. I don't know about now, but that's another thing as well. I'm sure my brother, when we were there, he said, "Oh, I've been here." He obviously drove for Stevens for 15 years, and quite often they would bring scrap down the road. I think he'd actually dropped scrap off there quite a number of times. And yeah, he used to tell me they used to work in cash, so they'd be given a massive wad of cash that they would have to take in the lorry back up the road or whatever, And yeah, there was big money in it. Yeah.
Were you on ICTV?
There was a documentary. There was a documentary that was made. I can't remember what channel it was on. I think maybe it was STV.
Oh no, that was the BBC. I watched that one with a blind guy what travels Scotland.
Yeah.
Opportunities. The Caithness Boxing Club is trying to give young people self-esteem.
How did you get involved here?
I thought of taking part in because at the time I had no hobby and I wanted to try something different. It's a really good sport to just do it and you're nice and involved and stuff.
People may say it's a bit aggressive. What do you say to that?
I don't think boxing's aggressive unless you use it.
Yeah.
I think it's more a mental kind of thing and it's good on your mental health and stuff.
Knees up!
The man who started this club is local Liall Mackenzie. He's a successful amateur and professional boxer.
Is the club just about boxing? Or do you think it's a bit more than that?
Initially, when I started it, it was purely really for the love of the sport. But it did a lot for me, and as the years have went on, I've kind of noticed how much it does for the young ones. I think probably traditionally boxing, more so than a lot of sports, attracts people from sort of disadvantaged backgrounds and things. And I think a lot of them probably don't hear very much positive, or never have heard very much positive throughout their life, you know, and we encourage them and give them a direction and a focus.
You said that a lot of young people was from quite often disadvantaged backgrounds. Is that true here?
Yes, I would say it's true here, yeah. I don't know what the figures are exactly, but I have read recently that Wick is one of the most deprived areas in the Highlands now, yeah, so, which is sad. But yeah, I think it is definitely the case here, yeah.
I watched
that was cool.
a year ago, I think.
I think it was called Our Town or something like that, wasn't it? And they go to different towns in Scotland. And it came to Wick. Yeah.
But the interview you got, you came across really well. Like what the whole idea of boxing club in Wick was all about. But I'm sure I've seen you on the news, man. I'm sure, like, were you in STV or no?
No, I don't think so. No, not I can remember. I should have made something up there and said, yeah, that was when I won the first title or something. But no, I don't think so. I'm happy enough to talk about it. I'm quite open about it, and I think it's important that if you're able to be, or you're at that stage, then you are open about it, because we've all, we're all human, and it's so many people have got these kind of experiences. So yeah, I think initially for me the boxing was because of the love of the sport, but more and more when I started coaching, it became about my real passion for supporting the youth. And I think that really came from my own journey. So I mentioned earlier that I think boxing is really good for helping people who come from a certain type of background. And I can relate to that because I come from that kind of background. So I went through, I was 30 years old actually before I realised. So my background basically is pretty severe domestic abuse. The procurator fiscal actually at the time said to my mother that it was the worst case of domestic abuse she'd seen in her career in the north of Scotland. So it was bad, and that was kind of the early or mid 90s when I was just a young lad that the procurator fiscal was saying that. So it was bad, and by the time I was, I think I was about 7 or something like that. My mother and my biological father divorced, and there was still quite a lot of trouble for years after that. He'd arrive and break into the house and all that kind of stuff, and the police would arrive and arrest him and all. But eventually, it faded away, and we were actually moved because of that kind of carry on. We were moved to people call them flats, but they're actually masonettes. Behind the old children's centre. What's it called? McRae Street, I think it's called.
Aye, I'm in that flat right now.
Oh, are you actually? All right. Well, we were moved to the one right behind the children's centre at the top. The police actually moved us in there into the top one so that he couldn't break in. Because when we were on the ground floor, he was smashing in, coming into the windows and things. So that there was this, carry on for a long time. But eventually, it all went away. And years later, my mum met a guy called Liall Mackenzie from originally from Northern Ireland. And years later, they got married. And he was a brilliant man. And obviously then he was a stepfather to me and my brother. So we lived happily ever after, so you would think. But through my teenage years and my 20s and that, I was having struggles, and I didn't know where they were coming from. And it was not until I was 30 years old, incredibly, I just can't believe now, looking back, that it took me to that stage, or that age, sorry, until I connected the struggles I was having to my upbringing. But society is just massively ignorant about all this, hence why I'm such an advocate for it now, and why I do speak openly about it. So the first thing I came across was attachment theory. I don't know if you've heard of attachment theory.
No.
It basically says that it's research that shows that the relationship you had with your primary caregivers, whether that was your biological parents or not, sort of shapes how you see the world. So say if you've got like a really volatile or abusive relationship with your caregivers, you don't you learn that the world isn't a safe place. You don't trust people. If you're crying all the time and your parents are arguing about it, they're not attending to you, they're not emotionally there for you. You basically don't trust the world. So that sort of shapes the way that you view the world. And you go through the world with that lens, although you don't realise it. And so later on, then you struggle in relationships, friendships, romantic relationships, all this kind of. And that was one of the things I was really struggling with. I didn't know why. And then I came across this study, attachment theory, and I read about anxious attachment, which basically says just that you don't trust people, you struggle in relationships, blah 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 blah. Right. And I thought, wow, that totally makes sense to me. Why has nobody told me this kind of thing? And it says in it that this often happens if X, Y, and Z has happened in your childhood. And I thought, well, that's strange because all those things have happened. So, I went down different rabbit holes and I ended up reading about the ACEs study, which stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And that's a study that shows, and it's been redone all over the world in different pockets of society. For 25 years now, it's been studied, and the results are incredibly similar, no matter where it's done, what class or what society or whatever. And it basically shows that the more adverse experiences or negative experiences you've had as a child, the more negative outcomes later on in life, and the more struggles you're going to have, whether it be, your health, physical and mental. Even things like your risk of asthma, your risk of cancer, you're going to have behavioural problems. You're going to have your risk of, I think the attempted suicide rate is like 12 times the amount. People who've had 4 ACEs or more are 12 times more likely to attempt to commit suicide. Just incredible statistics, really, really shocking statistics. And the original study, they had these 10 questions, and for each one experience you had, that was an ACE. And I think my ACE score was 8. But a lot of the categories, they say if you've had 4 or more, and I've had double that amount.
Yeah.
And I just thought, what? Why has nobody told me this? And as I say, we take such a punitive, judgmental approach in society. We have this really black and white view of, heaven and hell, good and bad, right and wrong. If you've done wrong, you need to be punished and blah, blah, blah. And what I realised through all this science, the more and more I read, I'm now of the opinion that nobody at their core is bad. I think there's always a reason behind people's behaviour. And it can always be explained. And people need understanding and support. And, because me, personally, although statistically, going by my ACE score, I could have ended up in all kind. I was much, much more likely, statistically, to have ended up in jail, to have, to be an addict, to have committed suicide, all these things. Luckily, I didn't do any of those. I nearly ended up in jail on a few. I got charged with assault and things, quite a few occasions, and luckily that didn't end up happening. But basically, I just went on a mission, reading and learning about all this for years and years. And through that, then, I could see the same pattern with people coming into the boxing club. Yeah. Hence why, as we started off saying, when people are having problems and they're fighting on the street or things like that, I would never in a million years take the approach that probably most of society would do, a judgmental, punitive approach and say, right, you're kicked out of the club. Because I would, in my view, the lens I now look at the world through, they need support, they need understanding. And so that was what I would try to do. And I would try to talk to them. And through understanding this myself and having conversations with people, quite often I was able to say, look, what's happening in your life, or what do you think is going on, or what's happened as a child, and quite often it would start them on that journey that I went on of realising all this, and then sort of starting their healing journey, if you like. So yeah, boxing now for me as a coach is like a method, if you like, or a tool to support youth who have sort of gone through similar things. And I'm a massive, massive advocate of all that.
Yeah. Like I think, honestly, I think like at night I spoke to you in the pub, and I think it was a lot like it's the way you fought, and I thought I think similar, but it's just you should like you ever thought about like being a counsellor, because I know like I'll be honest, I've been a counsellors, and most of them are shite. Like most of them do 10 step programs, sort of, well, not 10 step program, 10 like take this, take that, and then I'll be like, you basically read a book, you're clever, but you got no life experience, or they're just taking you and putting you into a box sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mind being at I was at a counsellor, and I was speaking about like, because I'm severely dyslexic, and I used to hide it because I was so ashamed of it. And what is it? And then after speaking to somebody, he's just handing me a leaflet. He goes, "Oh, read this." I said, "You never even listened to a word I said." That's where I think a lot of my things came from. My low self-esteem came from not able to read and write, moving to school, and then trying to hide it. That was a good part of it, because again, you get judged. People thinking, "Well, this guy can't read and write. He's at a certain age. What's wrong with him?" It means, but and it was like another things I was really good at. That was the only thing that it was holding me back.
Yeah.
And I think even through school, again, it's maybe I don't think it's changed that much, but you'd be punted into like blue huts. It means you'd be sitting there with other people with other difficulties, either behavioural difficulties because whatever is happening in their house, or people with different ADHD or whatever, and
Yeah.
what is it? Means you've got low self-esteem in yourself. You're thinking everybody thinks this, and it means you feel like you got left behind, sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I actually was. I'm actually dyslexic as well. I was
Really?
diagnosed with dyslexia, but even with that, now I have a bit of a theory, and this is purely
Yeah.
my own theory. There's no evidence for this, or not that I know of. But uh, one of the things I read a lot about it, because one of the things I sort of struggled with, as a lot of people who've been through these kind of things, was aggression and managing my emotions. And now I know, of course, anger is always a secondary emotion. There's always something underneath it.
Yeah.
Usually fear.
Yeah.
And it's because you're afraid that you lash out. But oh yeah, so I read a lot about the amygdala, which is the part of your brain, kind of primal part of your brain, that's responsible for that fight, flight, freeze. If you've been so it developed as a protection method. So say our ancestors, thousands and thousands of years ago, are wandering through the forest and a saber-toothed tiger jumps out. That part of the brain goes ping and floods your body with adrenaline and cortisol and all these stress hormones so that you can either fight or run like hell.
Mm.
And that happens before the rational part of your brain has time to think about it. Because that second it takes you to think about it, you're dead.
Yeah.
So it clicks off really quickly. And that's fine. And that helped us survive as a species. But if the saber-toothed tiger comes home every night into your bedroom and you can't escape, and this is happening night after night after night, that part of your brain basically gets stuck. So when it gets stuck on, and you're in this mode all the time. So then 20 years down the line, you're in your late 20s or whatever, somebody says something to you in the pub, you perceive it as a threat, fine. You hit them and you get yourself charged with assault, and people say, "What'd you do that for?" That was a massive overreaction. But to them, because their amygdala has been stuck on that mode all their life because of their child, this is how these things affect us. People don't realise that. People used to say to me, "I'll just count to 10." I used to think, if I could, I would. But not everybody's the same for that very reason. And I've kind of lost where I was going with that. What did you start off saying?
You started off. You got a theory about dyslexia, but even what you're speaking about here, like I know what you're speaking about, flight or fight thing. Because like people are highly, like, if they're in that situation, like your upbringing, they're constantly on alert. Like they can notice like how somebody's eye, slight changes where other people like they can't sense it. Like I know,
Absolutely.
like it's like I know, like what is it? Going into pubs, I'm like guaranteed it's going to be a fight tonight. You could tell in it, and it's like, but it's all calm, but it's just that sort of, you know,
It's like you've got spidey senses to
yeah,
that. You're able to pick up on that. You're always aware. Yeah, that was where I was going with it. Sorry, I've remembered now about the dyslexia. So we now know, science now shows us that when that part of your brain, the amygdala, is on hyper alert, it physically gets bigger. Actually,
okay,
that part of your brain, people who have went through that experience as a child, that part of their brain is physically bigger. And the part of your brain called the hippocampus that's responsible for learning and taking in new information, it's kind of shut down. If you're in survival mode, you're not in a place to learn, take in information, and all that kind of thing. You're just trying to survive.
yeah,
So you get all these kids going to school who, people will say, oh, they're slow, or they've got dyslexia or whatever. So for me personally, I was going in telling teachers certain things. Sometimes I had bruises and things on me. I was struggling to learn, and they said I was dyslexic. But nowadays, that was in the sort of mid-90s. So, we didn't know all this then. So I'm not blaming them. But nowadays, you would hope, given the science, that teachers and responsible people would be able to put two and two together. Because depending on what's going on at home, if they're in survival mode, the hippocampus that's responsible for learning and taking in information is not in a place to do that. It's literally shut down. And especially if they've got bruises or anything like that. So it's not, they should be asking, is there anything going on at home here? Is there something wrong with this child, which is what they historically would have said? Or are they not in a place to learn because of whatever?
yeah. I know. Like, is a really close mate of mine's, and looking back when he was younger, he used to be zoned out the whole time, and then now looking back, like same sort of upbringing as yourself, and what is it? And it was weird because that's exactly like he was out, and all what's happening in his house, he's just this is the only time he can zone out when he's around his friends. He doesn't have to be, and he's got ADHD, and but again, it might certain part of that might come from his upbringing, like because he is, highly strung,
Yeah. There's an author that I've read a lot of that, if anybody's watching this and they're interested in what we're speaking about, there's a guy called Dr. Gabor Mate. So the Mate is spelled like meat, but there's an accent above the E, so it's Gabor Mate. But he's got a book specifically about ADHD. He's got one about addiction and one about just sort of more general things. But yeah, he talks about all these things and sort of anxiety and depression and ADHD and all these things and how that relates to exactly what we're talking about. He sees things slightly different, so I think, up until recently, as I say, we've been, as a society, we've been really, really ignorant to all these things. And that's an example, just given there, teachers would say, oh, this kid is slow. It's not that he's slow, it's things going on at home. Nowadays, hopefully we'd recognise it. So again, like we said when we started off, I think things are moving in the right direction, just really, really slowly,
Yeah, I mean, in the last couple of years, like I think, like I was saying this in the last podcast, like I think everybody's jumping on the bandwagon, and one way I quite like it because it's made it look cool now. Oh, I'm dyslexic, I got ADHD, I'm autistic, but in the same way, people who really do have it, get covered up because I tell people I'm illiterate because my reading and writing's that bad, but the opposite side is like I'm good at something twice as good at something else, but it was just.
I know dyslexic people, if you look at the largest percentage of entrepreneurs and geniuses of the world actually are dyslexic. And you can see with you that you're really creative. You've obviously got a really creative brain, and that's really common with dyslexic people. So it's not that dyslexic people are stupid, it's just that different. Yeah. They try to fit everybody into the same box, and we're not all the same,
because it's again, it's like people with autism, and I know like looking at certain people and they got it, but it's such a big tier from somebody who's doesn't communicate with the world until somebody who's maybe slightly abrupt. It's a big difference. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
labeling it just in the same words. No, it's not. It's not the same.
I know that's it. I suppose with all of these things, it's on a scale, isn't it? You know,
yeah.
you can be anywhere on that scale, basically. Yeah.
It was, no, it's good. It's good you're open about it. Like, I mean, like it was again with Kev. It's good to speak about because I'm sure other people will be watching this and hear about your story and it inspired them, or like because this is like I say, I think guys are quite they cover it up, they either shield whatever because they're a bit embarrassed. Well, no, not embarrassed, but like they might be a bit ashamed. Like it took me 4 years to be honest about my reading and writing skills. Like, and I had to be like that because in when my book was coming out, I was being sick. I was like, oh no, people are going to see my handwriting, and they're going to absolutely slag me. And then it's all because of school. It's all as it back if you're like you're just going to get taken the piss out.
Yeah.
I was like, I just have to be
Yeah.
honest. You know, that's it.
Well, that's it. You know, to me, I admire people who, like we were saying in the boxing ring,
Yeah,
stick your neck out there, and whatever happens, happens. And it's the same with you. You wrote that book and you put it out there, and you're sticking your neck out for potential criticism. But it's such a brave thing to do. And yeah, I think you know that's why now I am open and do talk about it all because we've all had a life and we've all had different things happen and this is so common. This is really really common. You know, all these issues and things that's happening in people's lives. So I just now I don't see a reason to be ashamed of it or quiet about it or it's just life, isn't it? We're all on that journey, you know.
means I know we've been yapping for ages. It means what I was going to say. It means like you see like with your upbringing and the whole was it a kind of shield as well? You want to be this man's man. You're putting yourself in certain situations. Is you know I went to the army. I done you know a firefighter. You know a fireman. You know stuff that's dangerous situations. And a boxer. You know was that
You're
was
saying
that
I should be what did you say? I should be a therapist. I think you should be because you sussed me right out there. Yeah, that is exactly. I can hold my hands up now and say that uh, all that things I've done. So I joined the army. I boxed. You know, all this things was because underneath all that was this scared little boy that was trying to protect himself. And that I would you know I can admit that now that is the case for all of these so-called hard men out there or people who behave in a certain way or you know that's where that comes from is this effort to make themselves a big tough guy or whatever underneath all that is this scared little boy so
yeah
that was absolutely where all that came from for me. I mean I got great life lessons brilliant experiences and I, you know, obviously I did learn to fight and all this, which is handy, you know. But that is where it came from. It came from that unhealthy place. Now it came full circle, and I recognise that, which is good, you know. But yeah, you sussed me right out there.
Well, I mean, I'm guessing you've been to counselling and all the rest over the years, and
Yeah. So I actually, you know, I tried to do it the traditional way in Wick when I was still living in Wick, and they kept trying to put me, you know, over a period of I don't know 4 years. I went to the doctor on a few occasions, and I didn't know exactly what was wrong. You know, I was just kind of, I was just struggling, you know, and they were I wouldn't say I was depressed, but they kept trying to put me on antidepressants. And something intuitively in me at the time, I just didn't want to do that. So I didn't. I never, you know, I've never done that. You know, loads of people have, and it can help people to a degree. Great, but I didn't want to do that. And it was in my sort of desperate search, and I typed something in YouTube, and that's how I ended up coming across that attachment theory that started me on that journey. But then I ended up going on that BetterHelp, that online service,
okay,
and they were really really good because you mentioned earlier that I think you said you'd spoke to a therapist and they were
yeah,
basically hopeless.
yeah,
And the reason for that is I think because most of them are not trained, most of them are not trauma aware. Most of them haven't had this new training. You know, we're so far behind. Although this, as I say, the ACES study is 25 years old now, but we're so far behind the times in our practices and how we deal with things. It's so for some reason it infuriates me actually But now there's more and more therapists who are trauma aware, who are taught about all this stuff. And if you're lucky enough to get one who is, they'll recognise immediately. Because I remember, as I say, the doctors were hopeless, absolutely hopeless, and they kept trying to put me on antidepressants. And I says, no, that's not. And then I came across attachment theory, I came across ACEs, and that explained everything. And I thought, it's little wonder I'm having these struggles. It's little wonder that sometimes I have problems with my aggression or managing my emotions, blah blah blah. I've literally been shaped that way, So, and that took away all the shame and blame, and and that things very quickly started to change. But then, for me, as I say, as a boxing coach, quite often the young ones would come and say things to you. You weren't just a boxing coach. They'd share things with you, and I was able to say to them, I was able to prod them and ask certain questions. I recognised immediately that there was something behind all this. And then I thought back to, a year or two before that, when I went to the doctors, and I thought to myself, if somebody comes to me and says the things I said to those doctors now, I would recognise immediately that these professional doctors, did it, and they tried to put me on antidepressants. To me, that's shocking. It's not their fault because they're not trained in it. It's long past time that they are trained in it. It's this research is 25, 30 years old. So yeah, long story short, I have done therapy, and if you get a trauma-aware one who's taught about all this, then they can be really, really helpful.
Oh, that's good, man. No, it's good. It's good. It's good. Like, what is it? Stuff you're doing, and I could imagine you could pick up on people straight away. You can read people quite well. That's how people probably gravitate to you and can speak to you about stuff.
Yeah, I think in certain situations, but like I say, relationships is something I've kind of struggled with all through my life because I was suspicious of people or didn't trust people, and so that's something I've really struggled with, whether it be friendships, romantic relationships, all my life. But now that I've got more of an understanding of myself, I would say that probably is the case. But I'm quite a deep person. People used to, I was at the fire service in Wick. People used to joke because most people, conversation is quite lightsome. Talk about the football or the weather. I would always drag a conversation to a really deep place, which is good sometimes. But sometimes people are like, "Oh, Niall, come on, not just now," kind of thing, So.
I got a mate. Exactly the same. Me and him. We end up having cups of tea, and it's just we sit there and take a piss on that. He's got a dark sense of humour, but it always go really deep. And then, but I quite like having a mate what's like that means we're both on the same sort of level. We can chat about everything, and still have a laugh about it. It's just
aye. Yeah, you've got to, don't you? Because as we said earlier, we're all on this journey of life, But all that things I've said about my childhood and that applied to him as well. In fact, he was a couple of years older, so he got it worse in a lot of ways. I remember seeing, I still remember things because he was the older one. He got it worse, and I'm sure he'll not mind me saying that. So it applies to him as well. He's obviously been through it all and went through that same journey. We were able to support each other. We've always been really close, me and my brother, and supported each other.
But for upbringing, like what you're saying is you done both of you've done really well. There's a lot of people and then it's not like people would understand it if they went a different route, But
no, well, I think I've often thought that because, as I say, statistically speaking, it could have very easily went very differently for me and Lewis. But I think the reason for that, we were really lucky in the respect that her mother was an amazing woman, and so when my mother and my biological father split up, and my mother then met her stepfather William Lindsay, who again, an incredible man, a really good role model then for me and my brother. So we then had that support network, which a lot of people don't have, and that was enough to, although that stuff when you're young has a lasting effect. But if you have a buffer or a support, then later on in life, it can turn things around. And we were lucky enough that we had that in our mother and our stepfather, William Lindsay, but loads of people don't, sadly.
I mean, you're now going all about Scotland on buses,
Yeah, I'm a driver guide now. So I actually, when I was like, I wanted to come away from Wick for quite a while. When I came out of the army in 2012, I think it was, I went back to Wick, and I'm glad I did because we started the boxing club and all that stuff happened, which was absolutely brilliant. But then I wanted to get away from it for quite a while. The only thing holding me there was the boxing club because I absolutely loved coaching. I absolutely loved all the boxers and all the rest of it. But eventually, I made the decision. For myself, I need to get away from Caithness, and I was looking at jobs down here, and it just so happened I'd been chatting to a girl from down here for quite a period of time. And there's always a girl involved in it, and that started to become romantic. And at the same time, I got the offer for this job. So again, it's just like the stars aligned, and I just thought, why not? Why not just go for it? And yeah, when I was looking for a job, the plan was I was actually gonna train to be a driving instructor. That was kind of the long term plan. But I got offered this job. I seen the advert, and I applied for it. And the guy, one of the bosses, phoned me, and he was describing it. I said, "So wait a minute, let me get this right. What you're saying is, what I'll be doing is driving about beautiful locations in Scotland and meeting people from across the world, and you're going to pay me for it." He said, "Yeah, that's pretty much it." Yeah, so I said, "Right, sign me up." And I've been doing it I've been doing it since I came down, and I love it. And I've not went and done my driving instructor training because I'm just enjoying it so much.
That's good. Like, I mean, do you have to wear a kilt and give a tweeds and all the rest of it, or are you just driving a bus driver?
So you don't have to wear that, but any chance to get the kilt on, and I've got it on. So I often wear the Mackenzie kilt. So driver guide is the job title. So we're driving the buses and we're hooked up with a microphone. And we're given all the information as we're going. So it's really cool. It's really, really cool. I just actually made a video for my Instagram, Liall British Tours, earlier on today because I was counting. I've kept a list of all the countries that I've had on since starting. So I've been with the company now for just shy of 2 years, or about 2 years, and I've had 60 people from 60 different countries on the bus. Which I say in the video, I named them all in the video, which is pretty cool. That's just shy of a third of the world's countries.
Yeah,
I've had on the bus.
That's like I mean, what is it? Arkle Tower, like any chance to get a kilt on, I used to wear a kilt. Like, it's like even if I had a kilt in the cupboard, I'll be putting it on for a Sunday paper. I'll be just like any chance for a kilt on it. I was going to ask you, do you have your microphone and do you sit there and you chat away and tell stories about what you're going past? Do you do that?
Yeah. Well, I think you were supposed to get like 3 or 4 weeks training out with other driver guides. But the usual story, they were short staffed, so I think I got a week or 2 weeks or something like that. And then he says, "Oh, Lyle, we're really short. Do you mind doing this run yourself?" kind of thing. And I got thrown in at the deep end. But I remember going out with the other driver guides and listening to all the information, and I was really embarrassed at how little I knew about my own country. And they says to me, because we do a John O'Groats tour, and they says, "Oh, you're from Wick, you'll be good at that one. We'll put you on that one." And I says, "It's funny, you don't really know the history of where you're from. I could tell you, I could say, oh, I got battered round that corner when I was 13 years old. Or, that's not what they're interested in. You don't really know the history of your area." So yeah, I was really embarrassed, but you soon start picking it all up. And it's kind of just trial and error to start with. I'm probably making an absolute hash of it, but maybe I still am, I don't know. But yeah, you soon start picking all the information up.
Like my mate Tam, he used to work in the pubs like in Edinburgh, and he had the gift of gab. He was just really good at, and I think Americans loved him, or tourists love him, because he'd be, "Oh, this is the most haunted pub in Edinburgh," and he'd be like, "Is it?" And it's like, "You see a guy here, ghost," and then they'd be buying him drinks. He's just talking absolute shit, yeah, but like they loved it. It's just nonsense. But no, I mean that's cool, man. Sorry, I'm jumping back to the boxing now. Means you see when your wins, how do you deal with it? Like, was it a massive peak and then a drop, or were you quite just all the way okay?
No, yeah, if I'm honest, because you hear sort of big time boxers talking about that, or people who, after their boxing career, struggle, and I can slightly recognise that feeling because, yeah, after a fight, there's such a build up to it, and then you have the fight, and if you win, it's an amazing feeling. And you're getting all this messages and all this kind of, attention basically. And then the day after, like I could never sleep. When I went home that night, I could never sleep. I was always awake during the night, reading all the messages and soaking up all the attention. It's embarrassing to say, but we all do it, looking at all the likes and getting all this adrenaline hits. And then the day after or the day after that, it all goes quiet, and it's just it's like a come down. Yeah, so yeah, it's a bit. And if you lose, it's a sport of massive highs and massive lows. Because if you lose, it's horrible. It's really not nice.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you that, like, how do you deal when you do lose? Because just like you said, it's a sport where you're either going to win or lose. And I don't know about you, like I know, like I was like I fuck it, I hate fighting now, but it's been wrong place, wrong time, or or you have to be fights, and there's been times when they either got to better me, and then it used to just kill me. I used to just think about it for ages. Like I used to just be stuck and just be thinking about it the whole time, and just going. What? So it's a fight I had in high school. It still kind of annoys me.
Aye, who is it? We're going to find them.
I know.
It's,
But like I was wondering how like because you're always in the ring. How did you deal with that? Definitely.
well, that's partly why boxing is so difficult. That it's kind of widely regarded as all of the combat sports, whether it be boxing or UFC, are kind of widely regarded as the most difficult sports, and that's part of the reason why that mental side of it. It's just you and them in there. It's not like football or rugby, or you can kind of disappear into the background a little bit, and it'll not be noticed. But in boxing or any combat sport, if you're having a bad day, there's nowhere to hide, and you're going to pay for it. And no guy particularly, I don't think, but nobody wants to lose a fight to another person, and it really dumps your pride. So it's so difficult because you're putting it all out there. It's either win or lose. You're putting it all on the line, kind of thing. But I suppose, and certainly, when I became a coach, then with all the young ones, I would just say, look, it's a learning curve. You're not going to win them all. They say that a 50-50 record as an amateur is good. Winning 50% and losing 50% is a good record. So you're not going to win them all. And actually, I didn't really realise it at the time when I was boxing, but when I was coaching, I realised that it's really good life lessons because things in life don't always go your way. So it's for the young boxers when they lost, learning to deal with that was really good for them. It's a good life lesson to deal with disappointments and things not going to plan. Teaches you that resilience. It's not easy, that's for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say, you see, if you had losses, is it better? Like, I mean, yeah, it knocks your pride or confidence a wee bit, but in you think, well, I've got nothing to lose now, because I have dealt with a worse thing that it could happen. Means does the next time you're getting back in, is that a wee bit better or no?
I mean, personally, no. I think for me, if you've just lost one, it's almost the opposite. You think, right, I can't lose two in a row. I've got to win this one. So kind of put more pressure,
Yeah. No, I know. Like, as a guy, like he was in a wrestling, and then he went to MMA, and what is it? And he does a bare knuckle, and somebody was slagging him one day, like going, "Oh, he's not good," and I was like, I did see you jumping in the cage, like. I can't stand people slagging off somebody and they're not doing it themselves. He's trying. He goes and does it. I mean, sometimes he loses, sometimes he wins. But hats off to anybody jumps in the ring.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to do. It really isn't an easy thing to do. And I remember, when we started the club in Caithness, I kind of expected certain people to come. Certain people in the county who fancy themselves as a bit of a tough guy or whatever. And you would expect them to come to a boxing club, but most of them people didn't come to the boxing club. And quite often, if I was out on a Saturday night or whatever, people would say, "Oh, does such and such come to the club?" People you would expect. And I would say, no. And they thought, I thought they would go. And I'd often say, aye, that kind of person won't come because they'll get exposed. I mean, they like the idea of being a tough guy, but you get humbled when you come into a boxing
Yeah.
club or an MMA gym or whatever.
I guess.
You're
Sorry, man. No, I guess.
no, it's just you get humbled,
Yeah, because I'm guessing being like in a small town, because everybody knows everybody, they're probably like, it's like you said, they're probably like going, oh yeah, I'm gonna get exposed to being shite at this or not awful good. But everybody has to start off somewhere, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Because I remember, sometimes you did get those kind of people would come in, and I remember, the young lad I mentioned earlier who I first started coaching, young Scott Sutherland. By the time we started the club, I'd been coaching him for quite a while, and he actually registered under Inverness City Boxing Club to start with. He had a few fights with them, and then obviously when we started Caithness Boxing Club, he registered with us. So he'd had a few fights under his belt, and he was doing well. He was he's a good wee boxer. And on a few occasions, we'd get guys come in who were kind of throwing their weight about a little bit and, trying to act the tough man a wee bit. And they would say, I want to go in sparring. And I'd say, look, you're not ready to go in sparring yet,
Yeah.
They would insist. I'd say, okay, in you go. And then I'd say to Scott, who was just a young, if you see him walking past, you'd think nothing of him. He's not this big, massive guy or whatever. He's just a young, slender guy. I'd say, right, Scott, go in and teach him a lesson, basically, and he'd just box their head off. It's a really young, small guy, punch them about the place, and I'd say, look, don't come in a boxing club with an ego. You need to leave that at the door, and I would just give them that bit of a reality check. I used Scott a few times to do that. Apologies, Scott, if you're watching.
Oh, fair enough. How's your mum doing anyway?
Yeah, she's fine. We lost our stepfather last year. Just at the end of last year. So still, it's obviously still really difficult. He was ill for quite a while. My mother was basically, well, she was full-time carer for quite a lot of years before he passed. So, it's a massive shock to her, and obviously an adjustment for her. But no, she's fine. She's doing well. She's a really strong woman. She's obviously been through a lot, so she's doing well. And my brother obviously still up in Wick, and I'm doing in Inverness. So she's coming down to me and Jenna's for Christmas, and yeah.
It's when you said with cancer, because like my mum was stage 4 cancer, and that's how she moved back up north. She was wanting to move back up north at the time, and then I thought, at the time, because you hear that, you're like, I came up as well, but my mum, her treatment's done better than we thought. Means that's the main thing. Means like it's horrible to say, but this time last year I thought, we might not have my mum, but it's done better than we thought. Means that's. And I'll be same as you. Like my mum's like one of my best mates, sort of thing. I need to means
she's still going through it at the minute.
Yeah, she's still going through treatment, but she.
I didn't realise that.
I know, but
I'm sorry to hear that, mate.
No, honestly, she's doing far better. Like when 2 years ago, we're down in Edinburgh, and because they panned her off saying it was stress, and then it was lumps, and said, oh, it's fatty lumps, but no, it was like all her lymph nodes was. Means in it flipped my mindset what is important in life, and I thought at the time I'm worrying about this at the next. I should just worry about my mum. Means when my mum was wanting to move up north, I'm right. I'm coming up north, and I know, and it's good. It's good. She's still here. She's doing fine. Means that's the main thing. She's just has to live with it. Means just when I heard that, I was wondering if she was still doing okay.
Yeah, that was quite a lot of years ago now that she went through all that, and she's fine. There obviously is that part you're always kind of worrying in the background that it might come back, but that was years ago, and she's been fine. So there can be that really positive outcome, which is a massive, a massive positive.
Because even my dad got stage 4, and that was prostate cancer. That was last year, and I was like, fucking hell, this my mom's going through treatment. This is happening, but he got his cut out, and I'm like, oh, I'm I'm glad everybody's doing all right. It's all good.
Well, that's good, mate. That's good. That's a lot. That's a lot. Both parents. Gee.
I mean, unlike you, where like I've been brought up with my mum, and then as his thought, I couldn't see me not being my mum not being a bit like that. I thought I was shit myself like that. It was like waking up with a hangover every day. It's just that moment you go, oh no, that sinking feeling.
It's always there, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not nice, but I'm glad she's doing all right. Yeah.
And that cheery note.
Aye. Again, it's life, isn't it? It's life.
I'll never speak to Sean again. Fuck it, hell. But
no, as bad as each other, I think.
Yeah, man, we are like I'd say I've fucking go down that dark rabbit hole like that. Thanks for being honest with everything like that. I mean, I'm sure it's going to help somebody who watches this, and
hopefully, and a message to anyone who does watch and they want to reach out to either me or you to chat away, then please do. Absolutely.
That'd be good. I definitely. But I'll leave you for a rest tonight. Hopefully I never took up too much of your time.
No, not at all, mate. I've enjoyed it, as I say. It's been good.